real pleasure to be here, and hello to all of the truckers on the Real Women in Trucking cruise.
We are sitting with Craig today. He's going to tell us about his firm and some of the things that are going on in the legal area for trucking. And he's got a list here of the important issues that are going to help drivers be more informed.
Yeah, so well, first of all, thank you very much for the opportunity, Desiree. Our firm does represent a lot of truck drivers. Just a quick background on me. I grew up in Texas, went to the University of Texas Law School, and currently my law firm's in Los Angeles, but we also have an office in Tacoma, Washington, and we represent truck drivers in cases all over the country. And we've done cases as far as Tennessee, and of course a lot up in Washington State as well. So I guess the first topic we were going to talk about is trucking school fraud. And this is an issue where there has been quite a few cases that have been brought. A really big one in Utah against CR England. And my firm has also handled one of these cases against CRST currently. And this is the issue of the promises that some trucking companies make. Come work for us and we'll give you a chance to put you through school. And it seems like a really great deal, and they tell you, it's going to be free if you drive with us for a certain amount of time. But of course, what they don't tell you is if you leave for any reason before that time is over, you get hit with a big bill. And sometimes in the fine print of those contracts, there's a very high interest rate in addition to the bill. So we've experienced, sadly, a lot of clients who have gotten sent to collections, and people who have not only had their credit damaged, but in some instances have been forced out of their homes or apartments because of the drop in their credit. And in some cases, they were not able to complete the 10 months or 1 year, whatever the amount of the time was they're required to get the debt forgiveness, for reasons completely beyond their control, including medical emergencies or family emergencies. So that's a really big issue. Have you had a lot of people on social media talk about this with you?
Yes. It's a very well-known problem among drivers. I get calls at our organization from women all of the time who found this has been put on their credit. They are unhireable, and we know that some other companies have blackballed them, which it's an ongoing problem. So that's really good to hear somebody's doing something about it.
Yeah, and in fact, you just reminded me, Desiree, that second part is a big problem as well. In a lot of these contracts, if someone doesn't fulfill the repayment obligation under the contract, other companies in the industry will not give them a chance to come work for them. Mm-hmm. And that actually raises a lot of serious concerns in my mind about antitrust and collusion, mm-hmm. because you're not allowed to engage in any anti-competitive behavior. A lot of state laws and federal laws prohibit that. And it seems to me that if companies are not hired, there's like a wink. Sometimes it's a wink, and sometimes it's more than that. Sometimes companies will just come out and say, "You're still under contract. You haven't repaid your driving school debt to so and so we can't hire you."
Yes.
That's very, very
it's
troubling.
Very common, and it is very troubling that they are colluding like this and keeping people out of the workforce.
Yeah. So just a little bit more background on that particular issue. So many times industry, they'll have choice of law provisions that say if you ever have a dispute with the company, you can only sue us in our state where we're headquartered. And a lot of times the companies do that because it's more convenient for them. Sometimes they think they'll get a better hearing in their local courts. So, in a few of these instances of trucking school fraud, those contracts were used by attorneys against the industry because they were able to say everyone has the same claims under the same body of law. That's what happened with the CR England case in Utah. The plaintiff's lawyer in that case, that was not one of my firm's cases, but they basically said all the promises that were made to people, whether it was online or at the trucking schools or at the orientations, it was the same basic promises, and all the contracts that everybody had to sign said Utah law will apply. Mm-hmm. So the Utah court said, well, if that's the case, then all the thousands and thousands of drivers who were subject to trucking school fraud or who were steered to become independent contractors or owner-operators instead of company drivers, they can all bring their claims here in the Utah court. So that's a very, very big case that's pending there.
Okay, we can't wait to hear about that one. Talking about steering, once they get through the CDL school, the trucking school, you have some information on steering the drivers into owner-operator situations and misclassification as independent contractors. Talk about that.
Yeah, so that's another thing that we're seeing arise around the country, and a lot of drivers are complaining about. The companies have a big incentive to move people off of being company drivers and into either owner-operator or independent contractor relationships. And many times they'll say, hey, you're going to make more as an owner-operator, or they'll say, wouldn't you like to be your own business owner, and all this kind of stuff, and the insurance is on you, and if the truck breaks down, you're going to have to pay that. And so really what's happened is some of the bigger companies have moved maybe half of their workforce over to being either owner-operators or independent contractors based on kind of false promises without fully explaining all of the costs. And a lot of the numbers that are thrown out there about how much people are going to make are kind of gross numbers that don't take into account all the expenses. So those are cases that are out there. Our firm is exploring. We haven't filed one of those, but that one in Utah with CR England does involve those claims. And there's, I know that this is something a lot of drivers have complained about. Once they get out there, I'm not making the money that I was promised.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very quickly, drivers, if you have a tractor that's associated with a carrier and you can't leave and get a load somewhere else, and leave that carrier, you're not an owner-operator. You're tied to them, they control the freight, and they own the plate.
Right.
And they're just shifting a lot of cost onto you and burden.
Right.
It's really a huge problem because you do come into trucking wanting to be free and have that freedom, and they sell you this dream, and then the next thing you know, you're tied to the truck and you can't have any time off.
Right.
You're paying for it 24/7 with the detention time and kneel and rest breaks.
That's right. That's right. So, well, as you know, Desiree, a lot of people know a very significant chunk of the industry, the over-the-road drivers, line haul drivers, others are paid cents per mile.
Yeah.
And some companies will have some accessorial or additional pay for detention time over 2 hours or something like that. But in many, many instances, drivers are getting nothing. They're waiting at the docks. Sometimes it's not their fault. More often than not, it's not their fault, but they're not getting paid for that time. And of course, you got the pre-trip inspection, the post-trip inspection. That's a half hour a day. There's a lot of what we call non-productive working time. A lot of the on-duty, not driving time. And then there's the issue of rest breaks. There's federal law about rest breaks, and a lot of states have rest breaks. 16 states now have laws that say you're supposed to get a paid rest break. Among those, Washington's one of them. Oregon's Washington. California's one. So the issue has come up, well, if you're just being paid cents per mile, what about all this other working time where you're not getting paid at all? So there has been certain states now. I know some of you think California is a bad word, and honestly, having grown up in Texas, I felt that way too for many years, but in California, they have passed a law that all non-productive time, not just for truckers, but for all piece rate workers, has to be paid for separately and hourly. And some other states are following suit, and the industry really doesn't like this because...
and the industry, we mean the ATA.
And the ATA, that's right.
The ATA does not like this.
No, because the estimates vary, but everybody knows that there's 10, 20, 30 hours a week. We don't know exactly how much time, but there's a lot of time that drivers are at the docks or doing inspections or paperwork or fueling or doing things when the wheels aren't turning. And when the wheels aren't turning, you're not making any money. So any law that says you got to be paid for that time, I think is a good law. And of course, my firm has handled a lot of cases under California law and under Washington law for retro pay, for back pay. If you think about it, if someone has an hour or two per day of unproductive time, in California you can go back 4 years. That's a lot of time that people might be owed. The ATA, of course, is fought this in the courts, and after having lost it in the courts in multiple cases, now they're fighting it in Congress to try to get this law changed. Luckily, so far, they haven't been able to get it passed into law. We call that preemption, where they're trying to basically have the state laws nullified that say that drivers have to be paid separately and hourly for their detention time, their rest period time, etc.
It's been a difficult topic for drivers to understand, and we've had some calls to action over the last couple of years trying to get them to call their elected representatives. It is difficult to understand, but I hope that drivers, the more they hear it, the more that they understand what Craig is saying. Is it doesn't just apply to California drivers, it applies to all of us. We are never going to move forward with wages until we make sure that this does not, if the ATA likes it, it's bad for us.
Yeah, and you know, the thing is, a lot of these laws that they've been trying to pass in Congress, and they tried it in 2015 with the highway bill, they tried it in 2016 with the Federal Aviation Authorization Funding Bill, and they tried it in 2017 and 18 with the omnibus spending bills, and luckily didn't make it into any of them. But what they've been trying to do is to pass a law that basically says that the trucking companies never have to pay more than the federal minimum wage. And so as long as you take the cents per mile and you average it out over all the hours worked, it's more than, I think the federal minimum wage right now is $7.50 an hour. As long as it's more than $7.50 an hour, no trucking company would have to ever pay more than that. And you know, that is just not something that I think is a fair or a living wage. I don't think that's what drivers who have specialized skills, CDLs, etc., signed up for. And the laws that they're trying to pass in Congress don't just target California and Washington. It would basically freeze in place and prevent any progress in all of the states from having drivers be paid for all time worked. And that's the problem that we have with it. You know, my firm has filed over 100 cases like that on behalf of truck drivers in California and Washington. And we had one against Covenant in Tennessee as well. So it's not just.
I got a check.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that. So you're not.
I got a surprise check. Yeah.
You're not only the founder and very important leader of the Real Women in Trucking, but you're also one of my clients.
Yeah, I didn't even know. I was like, what is this?
Okay.
You know, a lot of drivers, when you take the hours they actually work and you divide it, some are making less than minimum wage.
Yeah.
I mean, I did it as a practice for a couple weeks, and it was like $5.42. I'm like, wow, because I started adding, this is how much I was at the dock. And, you know, even though it said, I put it up that I was on my break, I wasn't really on my break. They were having me move the truck, they were having me do this and that.
Right.
My mind was on work.
Right.
And a lot of drivers have never done that simple math to see that. So I'm really glad that you're taking this on.
Get back to that a little bit. So a lot of the trucking companies have been steering people to try to become owner-operators or independent contractors. We talked about that a little bit. There have been quite a lot of court decisions that have been coming out saying that if you're not allowed to drive for another company, then really you're misclassified. And you could have rights, and this isn't necessarily something limited to, you know, the left coast. If you're misclassified, you know, the test is whether the company has the right to control the manner and means of your daily work operations. What we find is a lot of times they call people independent contractors, but they call them owner-operators. They give them a 1099, but then they got all these work rules. They tell you exactly where to be, when to be. They want their logo on your truck.
Their logo, their color.
Et cetera.
You can't pick out the color of your truck.
Right. So even though we all know drivers are the kings and queens of the road and of their trucks, but if the company is exercising control over the day-to-day operations and schedule, they're really misclassified, and that in and of itself is the basis in many states for a lawsuit. You know, there's not just tax issues there, but there's also issues of, as you say, if you're not getting paid minimum wage.
Yeah.
And that could be under the federal laws or under the state laws. And a lot of times, if you're paying for your own gas and repairs, you know, right? If you take that into account, and it does drop it below minimum wage, you know?
Yes.
It certainly does. So
yes.
There have been some very, very large verdicts and settlements. I'm aware of a case against, I think it was Central Refrigerator, which I think is one of the subsidiaries of Swift, where I think they lost a case for over $200 million for misclassifying their truck drivers. And there's been some other big verdicts. We were talking about the detention and inspection time cases. Some juries have rendered some really big verdicts, including against Walmart. There's a very, very large verdict for not having paid for all the detention and inspection and loading time. So these are some of the issues that our firm's been working on, other lawyers have been working on, and that we feel that all the drivers on your crews, and really all the drivers in the country, should be more aware of, and we need to raise awareness of it, because not just in the legislatures but also in the courts, these are the battles that we are fighting to try to make sure that drivers do get paid for all time worked. There's no reason why truck drivers alone amongst all workers should have to eat their working time.
Yes.
There's no reason for that, and I personally don't think it's legal. I don't think it's moral either. So I really appreciate the opportunity to come.
Well, I
chat with you about
appreciate
these
you.
issues.
Yes, I appreciate that you're fighting for drivers, and we love having you. Craig is the diamond sponsor of the Lady Truck Driver Cruise. He made it possible for us to do a lot of stuff, and you'll see in our event booklet. This video is going to be up on our YouTube channel, and I really want to thank you. He's on his family vacation, and I really want to thank our camera crew tonight. Would you take a picture of your co-partner?
Yeah. That's Gabriella, my daughter.
And now you turn around to
Turn
him.
around. And this is one of my sons. So, yes, we did. We were, and I just want everybody on the cruise to know that they are going to be compensated for their time. Have a wonderful vacation, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you.